An amusing brawl through Greek history and mythology with no real goals, but it keeps you coming back for more, even if you don't know why. This is Okhlos. It combines mob-based brawling fighting mechanics with elements of permadeath and progression, which encourage you to play it over and over as you gradually uncover all of the content. The story is loosely based on ancient mythology, with slight adjustments to give it a light-hearted, Monty Python-esque feel, presented with little text boxes when you fight against the different gods and an encyclopedia listing each of the different peasants, critters and monsters. As this game is almost entirely gameplay, it probably makes sense to start with this. On the first playthrough you get a short introduction and a tutorial, which give you a very basic rundown of what you can do, but it doesn't really make sense until you actually get your hands dirty. The best way to describe the way in which this game plays is chaotic, as you are essentially trying to manage a mob as it smashes, bashes and crashes its way through ancient Greek civilization, killing as many creatures along the way, and maybe blowing up the odd building here and there. Even the control system plays into the chaotic nature of the game, but at the same time it doesn't feel cumbersome. You move your leader with the WASD keys, and your mob with the mouse, and there are only a few commands to worry about on top of that. There are also 4 power-ups which your slaves can carry around, which can be activated when needed, although it's not really obvious what some of them do. Meat clearly heals your mob, and bombs are pretty obvious, but there's also a helmet-shaped object which seemingly duplicates your army, and some kind of weird yellow square thing which seems to make your mob flash blue. But it's all very easy to use, and you can quite happily blunder your way through hoping for the best. There is clearly a lot of potential depth to the game, but it's fairly unusual for a game like this to be very accessible at the same time. This is another game which, although each run is relatively short, each one tends to be in the region of 40 to 60 minutes, when you take into account the various bosses you can encounter along the way, you'll get several playthroughs without seeing too many repeats. Naturally, the smaller monsters you meet along the way you will kill hundreds of in the end, and will present little to no challenge at all once you've picked up the correct set of starting characters to be able to breeze through the first 3 worlds. The early levels essentially become a lesson in preservation, as you need to keep a balance of the different types of troops in your team to be able to fight, defend and carry your power-ups, and this tends to be a lot easier to manage if you can keep a set of regular troops. However, the game will attempt to lure you into changing your team with the shops that appear between each level, particularly the ones which offer heroes in return for different quantities of your troops. Your selection of heroes will essentially dictate your gameplay style, as each have different stat bonuses, or some even offer special abilities such as ranged attacks, vampiric kills, or the ability to carry extra items. This system for the most part works well, but the selection of characters offered is completely random, which means from time to time you will not even be given a choice, because you don't happen to have the characters to be able to make a choice. The only thing that you really need to keep under direct management is the status of your mob, as this is what dictates what your crew can actually damage. At lower levels, your crew can only really fight the different monsters, but as you collect more members and wreak havoc through the levels, you develop up to a level which allows you to destroy entire buildings, allowing for a much easier passage. But this also comes with its own dangers. The easier it is to pass through the level holding the fight button, the more likely it is that you're going to run into various spike traps and destroy the explosive barrels along the way, simply through carelessness. The graphics are nicely put together, but again it's another game which has gone down the pixelated graphic route, so it's quite difficult to get hyped about it. And sound-wise the music is nice and it's fitting to the game, but I don't think they are the kind of tracks that you'd want to listen to in any other setting. I suppose it all comes down to the most important question. Is it fun? And that's a difficult question to answer. There have been several times where I've stopped playing after only 10 or 15 minutes in, simply because the gameplay has become stale and uninteresting. For the most part, the only interesting stages come later on when the monsters pose a real threat. But at the same time, I've still completed it 3 times and I've thrown over 6 hours at it, and it'd be very easy to keep playing it a whole bunch more, as there are loads of things I haven't even tried yet, such as different modes which are unlockable by finding different codes dotted around the game. While I don't think this is a bad game, it's one which is struggling to hold my full attention, and in a time where there are so many other games to choose from, that really doesn't hack it for me. I'll probably end up keeping it installed and having the odd run with it every now and then, but not a lot more than that. I'm not even sure what it's missing. I think it's because it demands more attention than a casual game, but it doesn't have enough of a challenge there to keep you interested, leaving you feeling ultimately unfulfilled. All being said, I still think it's worth a try. Maybe pick it up in a sale at a later date.